What if I told you that some of the most captivating people you know are secretly using tactics that blur the line between charm and manipulation? What if those dark seduction techniques aren't just about attraction, but control? Today, we're diving deep because understanding this isn't just about relationships, it's about power, ethics, and how far you're willing to go to get what you want. Stick with me, because what you'll learn might just change the way you see every interaction moving forward. When we talk about dark seduction techniques, we're diving into a world where charm and influence are wielded not just to attract, but to control, manipulate, and sometimes deceive. These techniques are like invisible threads that pull people in, often without their conscious awareness. They go beyond simple flirting or genuine connection. Instead, they rely on psychological strategies designed to bend perceptions, emotions, and decisions in the seducer's favor. This isn't just about getting someone's attention. It's about holding it, shaping it, and sometimes distorting it. At its core, dark seduction involves understanding human psychology deeply, how people think, what they crave emotionally, and the vulnerabilities that make them susceptible to influence. It's a calculated use of those insights to craft an experience or interaction that feels irresistible but isn't always what it seems on the surface. The techniques are often subtle, slipping through social filters because they mimic genuine connection or vulnerability. But beneath that surface, there's a strategic intent that serves the seducer's agenda rather than the well-being of both parties involved. For example, consider the concept of mirroring, one of the most common tools in the dark seduction toolbox. Mirroring is when someone subtly mimics the body language, tone of voice, or interests of the person they want to influence. On the surface, it seems innocent. After all, mirroring is a natural part of human bonding. But in the hands of someone skilled, it becomes a form of manipulation. They create a sense of familiarity and trust so quickly that the target lowers their guard almost instantly. Imagine meeting someone new, and within minutes they laugh at the same jokes, adopt your speech patterns, and share your favorite obscure band as if they've been your closest friend forever. This can make you feel understood and connected, but it's often a calculated move to disarm your defenses and make you more pliable to their influence. Another striking example is emotional withholding. This technique plays on the basic human need for connection and validation. The seducer will alternate between moments of warmth and coldness, creating an emotional roller coaster that hooks the target. Think about those toxic relationships where one person dangles affection like a prize, but then withdraws it without explanation. This push and pull dynamic triggers anxiety and longing, compelling the other person to try harder to regain that affection. The seducer controls the emotional environment, and this control becomes a form of power. This isn't just romance, it's manipulation of deep-seated emotional needs to create dependency and compliance. There's also gaslighting, which is one of the darkest and most insidious techniques in this category. Gaslighting involves making the target doubt their own perceptions or memories. Imagine having a conversation where the other person denies things they clearly said or did, making you question your sanity or judgment. Over time, this erodes the victim's confidence and makes them increasingly reliant on the manipulator for reality checks. In seduction, gaslighting can be used to keep someone uncertain and off balance, making them easier to influence. It's a psychological trap disguised as concern or confusion, but it leaves deep scars on the victim's sense of self. Dark seduction also frequently leverages vulnerability as a weapon. It sounds counterintuitive. How can vulnerability, which is usually about openness and honesty, be used manipulatively? But when someone shares just enough personal struggle or pain to evoke sympathy and trust, they can lower the target's defenses. This selective vulnerability is like bait, creating a false sense of intimacy. It can make the other person feel special or uniquely trusted, deepening emotional involvement quickly. Yet, this vulnerability is carefully controlled and often not reciprocated genuinely. Instead, it's a tactic to gain emotional leverage. These techniques can be seen not only in romantic contexts, but also in professional settings, social groups, and even politics. In the workplace, for example, someone might use charm, selective compliments, and controlled emotional displays to gain influence over colleagues or superiors. They may subtly undermine others while appearing supportive, creating a dynamic where they are seen as indispensable or trustworthy, even as they manipulate behind the scenes. The line between confident leadership and dark seduction tactics can sometimes blur, especially when ambition overrides ethics. What makes dark seduction particularly dangerous is its camouflage. The same tactics can feel incredibly seductive and addictive because they tap into universal human desires: to be seen, to be wanted, to be understood. The problem arises when those desires are exploited without regard for the other person's autonomy or emotional safety. It's not just about attraction, it's about power dynamics disguised as intimacy. For instance, imagine someone you meet at a party who seems to get you better than anyone else. They share just the right mix of personal stories, ask the perfect questions, and mirror your energy so flawlessly that you feel an instant bond. But beneath that connection lies an agenda. They want to influence your decisions, control how you see yourself, or gain access to something: your time, your resources, or your loyalty. This is dark seduction in action, not a genuine relationship, but a carefully orchestrated play designed to serve one side. In essence, defining dark seduction techniques means recognizing these subtle, often invisible manipulations. It means understanding that seduction isn't always about love or attraction. It can be about control and domination. And knowing this gives you the power to spot these tactics when they're being used on you, or to decide where your own ethical boundaries lie if you're navigating influence in your own life. The difference between influence and manipulation is often razor thin, like walking on a tightrope with no safety net. Both involve changing someone's thoughts, feelings, or behaviors, but the intention, transparency, and respect for the other person's autonomy separate one from the other. Influence is the art of persuasion, where all parties ideally remain aware and consenting, while manipulation is the dark underbelly, where control is taken covertly, often at the expense of the other person's freedom or well-being. Yet, because these two can look nearly identical on the surface, it becomes crucial to know how to distinguish them, especially in relationships, business, or any interaction where power dynamics are at play. At its core, influence respects boundaries. It's about presenting ideas, options, or emotions in a way that allows the other person to make an informed choice freely. A good influencer understands the power of empathy. They connect honestly, listen actively, and tailor their message so it resonates, but never forces or traps the other person into compliance. For example, imagine a mentor who wants their mentee to take on a challenging project. They lay out the benefits, the learning opportunities, and the possible risks, answering questions openly. The mentee feels empowered to say yes or no because they trust the mentor's honesty and respect for their agency. That is influence at its healthiest. Manipulation, on the other hand, is sneaky. It's about steering someone's decision without their full awareness or by distorting reality to serve one's own agenda. The manipulator exploits emotions, vulnerabilities, or cognitive biases, often hiding their true intentions behind a facade of concern or friendship. A classic example is when a coworker consistently offers help but withholds critical information to make themselves look indispensable. The coworker's behavior isn't just supportive, it's a strategic move to control how others perceive their value and ultimately to gain power in the office hierarchy. The targets might not even realize they're being manipulated until the damage is done. One way to differentiate influence from manipulation is to look at consent and transparency. Influence is transparent. The persuader doesn't hide their agenda or disguise the nature of their request. The person being influenced knows what's at stake and can push back or negotiate. Manipulation thrives in the shadows, camouflaging intent and often exploiting trust. For example, in romantic contexts, an influencer might openly express their feelings and desires, inviting mutual dialogue. A manipulator, however, might use guilt or emotional blackmail to coerce their partner into decisions, making the partner feel responsible for the manipulator's happiness or well-being. The manipulator's power comes from eroding the other person's ability to say no. Emotional appeals can be a powerful tool in both influence and manipulation, but how they're used makes all the difference. Influence appeals to shared values, genuine emotions, or logical reasons. Manipulation weaponizes emotions like fear, guilt, or shame to cloud judgment and force compliance. Take the example of a politician giving a speech. If they inspire hope by highlighting shared goals and positive futures, they're using influence. But if they spread fear, exaggerate threats, or scapegoat groups to sway voters, that's manipulation. The line blurs when emotions are so skillfully stirred that the audience loses critical thinking and acts impulsively. Another distinction lies in the long-term impact on the relationship or individual. Influence tends to build trust, respect, and mutual benefit. Even if the outcome isn't what one party hoped for, the foundation of honesty and respect remains intact. Manipulation, conversely, erodes trust and often leaves resentment, confusion, or emotional damage in its wake. Consider a friendship where one person constantly bends the other's will by feigning vulnerability or exaggerating crises to get their way. Over time, the manipulated friend might feel drained, questioning their own instincts, while the manipulator gains control through emotional exhaustion. The relationship becomes unbalanced, unhealthy, and toxic. Power imbalance also plays a crucial role in distinguishing influence from manipulation. When one party holds significantly more power, whether through social status, emotional leverage, or expertise, the risk of manipulation increases if that power is abused. For example, a charismatic leader might inspire a team with their vision and confidence. But if they use fear tactics, punishment threats, or emotional isolation to get compliance, they cross into manipulation. The team members might comply out of necessity, not genuine belief or trust, leading to burnout or rebellion later on. It's important to understand that even those who use dark seduction techniques don't always intend harm consciously. Sometimes people confuse assertiveness or persuasive skill with manipulation because they don't fully grasp the ethical boundaries. This is why self-awareness and reflection are essential. Asking questions like, am I respecting the other person's ability to say no? Or, am I being honest about my intentions? Can prevent crossing into manipulation. For example, a salesperson who genuinely believes in their product and presents it honestly is influencing. If they hide flaws or exaggerate benefits to close the deal, that's manipulation. In everyday life, the line can feel blurry because influence and manipulation often operate on a spectrum rather than as black and white opposites. For example, social media influencers may subtly manipulate followers by crafting idealized lifestyles or triggering FOMO, fear of missing out, to sell products. Followers might think they're making autonomous choices, but they're being nudged toward certain behaviors through curated content. Whether this counts as ethical influence or manipulative depends on transparency and intent. Are the influencers disclosing sponsorships honestly? Are they respecting followers' ability to make informed decisions? Or are they exploiting insecurities for profit? Understanding the difference between influence and manipulation is a critical skill for anyone who values authentic connection and ethical interaction. It requires recognizing your own intentions as well as reading the intentions of others. When you learn to spot manipulation, you protect yourself from being exploited. When you practice ethical influence, you build trust and meaningful relationships that last. This awareness can transform the way you engage with people, in love, business, or friendship, and set a standard for how you expect to be treated and how you treat others. When we talk about dark seduction, it's crucial to understand the specific techniques that make it so dangerously effective. These aren't just simple flirting tactics or playful games. They are calculated moves designed to captivate, control, and often confuse the target. The genius of these techniques lies in their subtlety, often masked as charm, vulnerability, or genuine connection. They slip past defenses and embed themselves deep into someone's psyche. Let's break down some of the most common tools used in dark seduction and peel back the layers on why they work so well. One of the most insidious tactics is gaslighting. It's a psychological manipulation that shakes the foundation of a person's reality. Imagine being in a relationship where your partner constantly denies things you know to be true, or insists you're too sensitive when you express hurt feelings. Over time, the constant denial and twisting of facts make you question your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. Gaslighting doesn't just make the victim doubt a single moment, it dismantles their entire sense of self. In dark seduction, this technique is powerful because it erodes resistance and builds dependency. The victim becomes increasingly reliant on the manipulator's version of reality, giving them immense control over emotions and decisions. Closely related is the use of mirroring, which at first glance appears innocent or even flattering. Mirroring means copying another person's body language, speech patterns, or interests to create an unconscious feeling of trust and familiarity. Humans are wired to feel comfortable around those who are similar to them, so when someone mirrors you perfectly, it feels like an instant bond has formed. The danger here is that the seducer isn't being authentic. They're wearing a mask designed to lure you in. Picture meeting someone who shares all your hobbies, matches your tone of voice, and laughs at your jokes just right. It feels natural and effortless. But behind that facade is a strategy to lower your defenses and increase your emotional openness. This manufactured connection can lead you to trust and even like someone far more quickly than you normally would. Another cornerstone of dark seduction is emotional withholding, a tactic that plays on human needs for validation and connection. This is the push and pull dance familiar to anyone who has been caught in a toxic relationship. The seducer offers warmth, attention, and affection, then abruptly pulls it away, creating an emotional void. This inconsistency triggers anxiety and craving in the target, who begins to chase the highs of connection while trying to avoid the lows of rejection. Emotional withholding is a form of control because it keeps the other person off balance and desperate to regain favor. It's a slow drip of affection that leaves the target feeling like they're never quite enough, but constantly hoping for approval. Gaslighting, mirroring, and emotional withholding often work in tandem, but dark seduction also employs selective vulnerability as a powerful weapon. Unlike genuine openness, selective vulnerability is carefully curated. The seducer shares just enough personal information or emotional pain to evoke sympathy and deepen emotional engagement. but never enough to expose themselves fully or risk being vulnerable in return. This tactic makes the other person feel special, as if they're being trusted with something secret and intimate. It fast-tracks emotional intimacy, but it's a one-way street. The vulnerability is a lure, not a bridge to true connection. This keeps the target emotionally hooked, while the seducer maintains control and distance. We can't discuss dark seduction without mentioning love bombing, a tactic that floods the target with overwhelming affection, compliments, and attention at the beginning of a relationship. On the surface, it feels like the most romantic gesture. Grand declarations, lavish gifts, constant texting and calls, all designed to sweep someone off their feet. But love bombing isn't about building a healthy bond. It's about creating dependency quickly. The intense initial rush makes the target emotionally addicted to the seducer's approval and presence. When the love bombing inevitably stops or is followed by coldness, the target is left desperate to recapture those feelings. This cycle of highs and lows fuels emotional dependency and gives the seducer significant power. Another subtle yet effective technique is gaslighting adjacent guilt tripping. It's the art of making someone feel responsible for the manipulator's feelings or problems. Imagine a partner who sighs heavily or looks disappointed whenever you assert your needs or set boundaries. They might say things like, "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't do that," or "I guess I'm just too much for you to handle." These statements are designed to make you feel guilty for having independent desires, pushing you to prioritize their emotions above your own. This guilt becomes a leash, a tool for controlling decisions and behavior without overt demands or threats. Projection is another technique often woven into dark seduction. It involves attributing one's own negative traits, feelings, or behaviors onto the target. For example, a manipulator who is dishonest might accuse their partner of lying or cheating without cause. This tactic confuses the target, shifts blame, and keeps them constantly on the defensive. It distorts reality and creates a sense of insecurity, making the target doubt their own judgment and feel like they're always trying to prove their innocence or worth. This erosion of confidence is a powerful form of control. All these techniques share a common thread. They exploit basic human desires for connection, acceptance, and security. What makes them dark is the absence of genuine care or respect. These tactics are tools to dominate and control rather than to build mutual intimacy. People skilled in dark seduction can be incredibly charismatic, making it difficult to recognize their manipulation until you're deeply entangled. The danger is that these techniques leave lasting emotional scars and can make victims question their own worth and sanity. Even in social situations outside of intimate relationships, such as workplaces or friendships, these tactics can appear in subtler forms. A colleague who gaslights you about deadlines, a friend who mirrors your emotions only to exploit your secrets later, or a leader who love bombs their team with praise but withholds genuine support. All reflect the dark seduction blueprint of control disguised as care. Understanding these techniques is the first step toward protecting yourself from becoming an unwitting participant in someone else's game. Recognizing the patterns, the emotional highs and lows, the confusing contradictions, the overly tailored connection, can help you maintain your boundaries and clarity. The seductive power of these tactics lies not just in the words spoken or actions taken, but in their ability to hijack emotions and blur lines between love, trust, and control. When dark seduction techniques are used against someone, the effects go far beyond a simple attraction or fleeting emotional moment. The psychological impact on the target can be profound, subtle at first, but growing more intense and damaging over time. These techniques chip away at a person's sense of self, distort their reality, and twist their emotions in ways that can leave long-lasting scars. What's terrifying is that the damage often happens without the target even realizing what's happening to them until they feel trapped in a web of confusion, doubt, and emotional dependency. One of the most immediate psychological impacts is the erosion of self-trust and confidence. When someone is consistently manipulated through gaslighting, emotional withholding, or guilt tripping, they start to second-guess their own feelings and decisions. Imagine constantly being told you're overreacting or too sensitive when you express your concerns or boundaries. Over time, this leads to a dangerous internal dialogue where the victim doubts their own judgment. They might replay conversations over and over, trying to find the right way to respond, questioning if their instincts are valid or if they are somehow the problem. This erosion of self-trust can make the victim increasingly dependent on the manipulator for validation, creating a toxic cycle where the manipulator's approval becomes the emotional lifeline. This dependency is another critical psychological effect. Dark seduction techniques often aim to create a push and pull dynamic, offering warmth and affection one moment and coldness or indifference the next. This emotional roller coaster triggers anxiety and craving in the target's brain. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, where unpredictable rewards lead to heightened attachment and obsession. Think about the addictive nature of gambling. The uncertainty and occasional wins keep people hooked for hours. Similarly, when affection and approval come in unpredictable bursts, the target becomes hooked, constantly striving to regain the seducer's favor. This creates a state of emotional confusion where the target tolerates behaviors they would otherwise reject, hoping that the next moment of warmth will come. The target's sense of reality itself can become distorted. Gaslighting, in particular, is devastating because it attacks a person's perception of truth. When someone repeatedly denies facts, rewrites history, or minimizes the target's experiences, it creates cognitive dissonance, a mental discomfort caused by holding contradictory beliefs. The target is forced to choose between trusting their own memory or the manipulator's version of reality. This confusion can lead to feelings of disorientation, self-doubt, and even symptoms similar to trauma. Imagine waking up each day unsure if your memories or feelings are valid, always questioning what's real and what's not. This disorientation doesn't just affect how the victim views the relationship. It spills over into all areas of life, affecting work, friendships, and mental health. The emotional toll can also manifest as heightened anxiety, depression, and even PTSD-like symptoms. Being caught in a manipulative relationship is a chronic stressor that wears down the nervous system. The constant tension, fear of rejection, and emotional unpredictability activate the body's fight or flight response repeatedly, leading to exhaustion and emotional numbness. Many targets describe feeling on edge all the time, or having sudden emotional crashes. Depression often follows because the person feels powerless to change their situation and overwhelmed by feelings of worthlessness. In severe cases, the psychological impact can mirror post-traumatic stress disorder, where triggers related to the manipulator cause panic attacks, flashbacks, or dissociation. One example that illustrates this impact vividly is the story of Sarah, who found herself entangled with a partner skilled in dark seduction. At first, he seemed charming, attentive, and deeply interested in her life. But gradually, Sarah noticed she was walking on eggshells, never sure if she'd say the wrong thing and trigger his coldness or anger. When she tried to talk about her feelings, he told her she was too emotional and making things up. Over time, Sarah's confidence plummeted. She started questioning her own memories and blamed herself for every argument. She felt addicted to his approval, waiting desperately for moments of warmth that became more scarce. The psychological weight left her anxious, isolated, and confused, unsure of who she was without him. This is the harsh reality for many caught in the grip of dark seduction. The victim's mind and emotions become a battlefield where their sense of identity is slowly worn down. The impact doesn't always stop when the relationship ends. Many survivors of manipulation struggle with long-term trust issues and fear of intimacy. Because their sense of reality was distorted and their boundaries violated, they often find it hard to believe in the sincerity of others. They might approach new relationships with suspicion or anxiety, worried that the same patterns will repeat. This can lead to emotional isolation and difficulty forming authentic connections. Healing requires rebuilding trust in themselves and others, a process that takes time, self-compassion, and often professional help. In addition to personal relationships, the psychological impact of dark seduction techniques can extend into professional and social settings. Imagine a workplace where a manager uses manipulation, offering praise one moment, withholding key information the next, then casting doubt on an employee's competence. The employee might begin to doubt their skills, overwork themselves to prove worth, or become anxious about every interaction. This chronic manipulation can lead to burnout, low self-esteem, and even decisions to leave jobs or social groups prematurely. The impact is wide-reaching because it affects how individuals view their value, capability, and place in the world. The target often experiences a deep internal conflict between love or admiration for the manipulator and the pain caused by their behavior. This cognitive dissonance is part of what makes dark seduction so confusing and hard to escape. The brain tries to reconcile the warm moments with the cold ones, the affection with the control, and the intimacy with the betrayal. This internal tug-of-war can keep someone stuck for years, trying to fix the relationship or themselves, believing if only they change, the manipulator will love them fully. It's a trap that feeds on hope and fear simultaneously. Ultimately, the psychological impact on the target is complex and multifaceted. It invades their self-perception, emotional stability, and worldview, creating a labyrinth of confusion and pain that is difficult to navigate. Understanding these effects is crucial, not just for those who might be targets, but also for anyone who wants to foster healthier, more ethical relationships. Because once you recognize the damage these techniques cause, the urgency to draw boundaries and demand respect becomes undeniable. When navigating the complex terrain of influence and seduction, the question of ethics looms large, especially when the line between persuasion and manipulation becomes blurred. Ethical considerations are not just abstract ideals, but essential guardrails that protect both parties in any interaction. They remind us that influence should never come at the expense of another person's autonomy, dignity, or well-being. Personal boundaries, then, are the practical expressions of these ethics, acting as invisible lines that define what is acceptable and what is not in interpersonal dynamics. Understanding and respecting these boundaries isn't just about being polite. It's about honoring the fundamental right of each person to control their own choices and emotions. At the heart of ethical influence lies the principle of consent. This isn't just legal jargon, but a foundational concept that means any attempt to change someone's mind or behavior should be transparent and respectful. Consent requires clarity about intentions, feelings, and the nature of the interaction, and freedom, meaning the other person should feel safe to say no without fear of repercussion or coercion. For example, consider a dating scenario where one person openly expresses interest and invites the other to get to know them better. They give space for the other person to decline or set the pace. That's ethical seduction in action. In contrast, if someone uses guilt, pressure, or deceptive tactics to push the other into intimacy, the ethical boundary has been crossed. The interaction becomes exploitative rather than consensual. Another critical ethical aspect is honesty. This means being truthful about your intentions and not disguising your motives to manipulate emotions or actions. When people hide their true agenda behind charm or feigned vulnerability, they betray trust and undermine the foundation of any healthy connection. For instance, a person who pretends to share your interests and values just to win your affection without genuine alignment is acting unethically. This deceit can cause emotional harm and create confusion that might take years to untangle. Honesty in communication respects the other person's right to make decisions based on accurate information rather than illusions or partial truths.